I am 99 years old, and it took me almost a full century to understand something I should have seen much earlier. Not at 80, not even at 60, but today, sitting alone in this quiet room with more memories than people left in my life, I finally understand why none of my marriages worked. And the truth is not dramatic. It's not something you can easily blame on bad luck or the wrong men. It's quieter than that and much more uncomfortable, because the truth is, I was there in all three marriages and I never really showed up. My first marriage happened when I was 22. Back then, I believed what most girls around me believed, that love was something that would just happen if you found the right person. His name was Daniel. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind. The kind of man who remembered small things, like how I took my tea or how I got quiet when something was bothering me. We didn't have much money. We lived in a small apartment with thin walls and a kitchen that always felt too warm. But there were moments, simple ones, where life felt enough. I remember one evening, the electricity had gone out and we sat on the floor with candles between us. He started telling me stories from his childhood, laughing at things that weren't even that funny. And I remember smiling, but not really listening. Even then, my mind was somewhere else, thinking about the future, thinking about what we didn't have, thinking about what life should look like. I thought I was being practical, focused, but now I realize I was absent. Daniel used to ask me to go on walks. Just 10 minutes, he would say, standing by the door with that hopeful look in his eyes. And most days, I said no. I'm tired. I have things to do. Maybe tomorrow. There was always a tomorrow back then. At least that's what I believed. We were married for 9 years. And if you ask anyone who knew us, they would probably say nothing was really wrong. No big fights, no betrayal, no dramatic ending. Just distance, the kind that doesn't happen overnight. It builds quietly in the small moments you ignore, in the conversations you don't fully listen to, in the times you choose distraction over connection. The day he left, he didn't shout. He didn't accuse me of anything. He just sat across from me at the same table where we used to eat dinner in silence and said something I didn't understand at the time. He said, "I feel alone even when I'm with you." I remember feeling confused, almost defensive, because in my mind, I had done everything right. I stayed. I was loyal. I fulfilled my responsibilities. Wasn't that what a good wife was supposed to do? But now, at 99, I wish I'd asked him one simple question. Where did I lose you? Instead, I let him walk away, believing he was asking for too much. A year later, I told myself a story that we were just not compatible, that it was a phase, that the right man would understand me better. So when I met my second husband, I didn't think I was repeating anything. I thought I was starting fresh. His name was Michael. He was different from Daniel in many ways. More expressive, more patient. The kind of man who would sit next to you even if you had nothing to say. And in the beginning, it felt easier, softer, like maybe this time it would work. But there's something I didn't know back then. You can change the person, you can change the environment, you can even change your life completely. But if you don't notice the patterns inside you, you carry them into every new beginning. Michael used to talk a lot about his day, about his thoughts, about things that mattered to him. And I would nod, smile, respond when needed. But deep down, I wasn't really there either. Not fully, not the way a person deserves to be loved. At the time, I called it being busy, being tired, having too much on my mind. But now I have a different word for it. Avoidance. I avoided silence. I avoided emotional closeness. I avoided the effort it takes to truly understand another human being, because that kind of presence requires something most people don't realize. It requires you to slow down, and I didn't know how to slow down. Michael stayed longer than Daniel, long enough for the pattern to settle in deeper, long enough for the distance to feel normal. And one night, he said something that felt strangely familiar, something I had heard before, but never truly listened to. But this time, it hit a little differently. Michael looked at me that night, not with anger, not with frustration, but with something much heavier. Tiredness, the kind that doesn't come from work, but from trying for too long alone. We were sitting in the living room. The television was on, but neither of us was watching. I remember holding a cup of tea in my hands, already cold, but I hadn't noticed. He said my name once, softly, and when I didn't respond, he said it again. That's when I looked at him. And then he said it almost the same words Daniel had said years before. I don't think you're really here, even when you're sitting right next to me. For a moment, everything went quiet. Not in the room, but inside me. It was strange, because instead of arguing, instead of defending myself like I had done in my first marriage, I just sat there, still, like a part of me recognized something but wasn't ready to face it yet. I wish I could tell you that was the moment everything changed, that I suddenly understood my mistake and became a better partner. But that's not how real life works. Change, real change, doesn't come from one sentence, especially when you spent years convincing yourself you're not the problem. So what did I do? I nodded. I said, I understand. And the next day, I went back to being the same person. I still listened, but not deeply. I still cared, but from a distance. I still stayed, but without truly connecting. And the hardest part to admit is this: I thought I was trying. That's the danger of it. When you're not present, you don't even realize how much you're missing. You think small efforts are enough. You think being physically there means you're emotionally there too. But they are not the same thing. Years pass like that. Quietly, no big fights, no dramatic endings, just a slow, invisible drifting apart. We built a life on the outside, a house, a routine, shared responsibilities. From a distance, it probably looked stable, maybe even successful. But inside that life, there was a silence we never talked about. Michael stopped sharing things with me, not suddenly, gradually. At first, I didn't notice. Then I told myself he was just tired. Then I convinced myself this is what long marriages look like. People become quieter, more independent, less expressive. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was much simpler. He stopped trying because I never really met him halfway. One evening, I remember he was sitting outside, just staring at nothing. I asked him, "What are you thinking about?" And he paused for a long moment before saying, "Nothing important." That was the moment, that small, ordinary moment, when I should have understood everything. Because when someone who used to share everything with you starts saying nothing, it doesn't mean there's nothing there. It means they've learned you're not really listening. But I didn't see it that way. Not then. I just nodded and went back inside. That's how disconnection happens. Not through big mistakes, but through small moments that seem insignificant at the time. We stayed together for 18 years, longer than my first marriage, long enough to convince ourselves this one was better. But better doesn't always mean right. Sometimes it just means quieter. The end came the same way it began. Without drama, without shouting, without blame. He didn't leave because he hated me. He left because there was nothing left to hold on to. And once again, I told myself a story that I had been unlucky, that I hadn't found the right person yet, that love was just complicated. It's easier to believe that, easier than sitting alone and asking yourself a question that might change everything. What if the problem is me? But I didn't ask that question. Not after the first marriage. Not after the second. Some people learn from pain. Others learn how to explain it away. And I became very good at explaining. By the time I met my third husband, I was older, calmer, more experienced, as people like to say. His name was Frank, and something about him felt different. Not because he was extraordinary, but because he was simple. He didn't ask for much, just presence, just attention, just small moments of connection, things I had been given before and quietly neglected. At that age, you would think I had learned something. that life had softened me. That loss had made me wiser. But patterns don't disappear with time. They just become more subtle. And what I didn't know, what I couldn't see even then, was that this marriage would be my last chance to understand everything. And for the first time in my life, I came closer to the truth. Frank was different, not in a loud way, not in a way that makes you instantly fall in love. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who didn't try to impress you, but stayed. By the time I met him, I was no longer young. Life had already happened to me. 2 marriages, 2 endings, 2 stories I never fully understood. And maybe that's why I didn't rush this time. I told myself, I'll take it slow. I'll be careful. I won't make the same mistakes. But here's the truth no one tells you. Taking it slow is not the same as being present. Frank would sit with me for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in silence. And for the first time, I started noticing something. He wasn't asking for big things. No grand gestures. No complicated expectations. Just attention. Real attention. At first, I struggled. Out of habit, my mind would drift. I would hear him, but not fully listen. I would sit beside him, but still feel slightly distant. But something in me had started to change. Maybe it was age, maybe it was loneliness, or maybe it was the quiet realization that I was running out of time. So slowly, very slowly, I began to try, not in a dramatic way, just small things. When he spoke, I started putting everything else aside. When he repeated a story, I didn't rush him. When he asked me to sit with him, I said yes. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Connection. Not the kind you imagine in your youth, but something deeper, quieter, real. And that's when it happened. That's when I finally understood what love actually requires. Not perfection, not sacrifice, not even compatibility, just presence. But by the time I understood it, I had already made the same mistake. I had taken too long. Frank fell ill one winter. It wasn't sudden. It was the kind of illness that gives you time, but not enough. I remember sitting beside his bed, holding his hand, and thinking about all the moments I had almost missed, all the times I could have loved him better, sooner. One evening, he looked at me with that same calm expression he always had and said, "You're here now, not you were always there, not you did everything right, just you're here now." And that sentence broke something inside me because I knew what he meant. He wasn't thanking me for a lifetime of presence. He was acknowledging that I had finally arrived, but it had taken me too long to get there. He passed away a few weeks later, quietly, the same way he lived. And after that, there was nothing left to distract me. No responsibilities, no routines. No one sitting beside me anymore. Just me and the truth I had avoided my entire life. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't the wrong men. It wasn't timing. It was me. I was physically present, but emotionally absent. I thought love was about staying, about not leaving, about doing what was expected. But love, real love, is about showing up fully again and again, even in the smallest moments. And I didn't know how to do that until it was almost too late. I am 99 years old now. And if you ask me what my biggest regret is, it's not that my marriage is ended. It's that in all those years, I had love in front of me 3 different times, and I kept arriving late. So if you're listening to me right now, thinking you still have time, thinking you'll do it better later, don't. Because later is where I lived my entire life. And later never came.